All right, Ultra Noops Nation, my name is Reed Nelson. This is Izzy Alkafas. This is This Week in Rec. We are at the seating committee meeting. We went 1 through 21. Arguments were had. We had some good debates. Here we go, breaking down brackets. We've already, on the left side, maybe the right side, the rankings are up, and you'll be able to take a look at them. Well, the board's back there as well. So, number 1 seed, Goodfellas. Let's actually break down the 1 through 4. Goodfellas region, Rebels region, Avengers region, Sock Thumpers region. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any real surprises here? None really had by the players committee.
No. I mean, the only thing I could have seen is an argument having the Sock Thumpers get knocked down a rung or two for having a 4-on-5 game and a forfeit in the last 3 weeks. But other than that, no, not. I think those are the top 3 are absolutely the top 3.
Are you eating something right now?
I'm hiding it.
Keep it professional. Jeez Louise. Okay, the Goodfellas region, they'll play the winner of Team America, 16 seed, Muskie, 17 seed. Team America, first team, first season in the league. Muskie, 17. I'm not going to ask you to make a prediction. We're not there yet, but talk about these two teams, kind of where they ended up.
Well, some, just me, thinks that taking an injury into account. So the Muskies losing Hazen, and same thing for UANO, should knock them down a little bit. Between those two teams, they're so different. The Muskies have a really good solid team. The issue with the Muskies is that they're undersized. But Hayek can shoot. Luke Samus runs a good team. Mike's a hustle guy. Christensen plays great defense. Casey can shoot. Junius gets everybody going. I mean, they got a good team. And Team America is a little bit fresh. Can either of those two teams make a run? Not against the Goodfellas, but they're two good solid teams that next season they'll definitely be higher than 16 and 17.
Okay, rounding out that division, 8-seeded Blue Chips, 9-seeded UANO. We actually had a pretty decent-sized argument about this. UANO finished at 6-2 with 93 votes. Blue Chips 5-3 with 77 votes. Yet we put Blue Chips over UANO. You were one of the big reasons behind that swap. Talk about why you had the Blue Chips in front of UANO.
Well, UANO went 6-2, but they didn't really have any good quality wins. I think their best win was, if my memory is correct, was FOB, whereas the Blue Chips beat the Gorillas and Red Devils, and they also had a tougher schedule. UANO wasn't really tested throughout the season, and when they were tested, they lost. So I just don't believe in the 6-2. It's kind of like we used to punish DY Nasty and them before they made the run, being 6-2 and having an easy schedule. So I kind of had the same sentiment there. I initially had them higher than they should have been when I first did my rankings because I kind of went off record. And then when I started digging into the resumes, I dropped them down to 12. And they ended up at 9. So that's just kind of what's your take on it? You already know my take. I take into account our pre-meeting votes. And we had UANO 16 points above the Blue Chips, and I just don't regard that Gorillas win as much as I would in the past. So I had UANO over the Blue Chips, but yeah. And it doesn't matter.
It's a democracy,
and it's 8-9.
It's 8-9, so it doesn't really matter. So any chance the Goodfellas don't come out of this region?
The Blue Chips could beat them. That's my honest opinion. I think the Blue Chips playing a good 44 minutes with all their guys, Billy playing good minutes. They can beat them.
Okay. We'll go down to the 4th-seeded region, Sock Thumpers. They will play the winner of the Red Devils and the Barracudas. Who do you have here and why? Oh, actually, no. Let's not do predictions. So, I'm trying to think of a talking point here. The Red Devils were bumped up a little bit based on where they ended right away. Their win over the Gorillas helped them a lot. And the Squires. Talk about the Red Devils.
Those are two good wins in my opinion. I think they definitely, now that I look back and I look at the 12-13, did they have an argument to hop ahead of them even though they're 27 points away? Yes. The issue with the Red Devils is they had some bad losses in there, so that kind of offset. They're out of all the teams, they're probably they're the most polarizing in terms of how they played all season. They played really well against two really good teams, and they played really poorly against two bad teams. And we don't really know through 8 weeks. We don't really know how good that team is. And you and I did Rec Rewind, and they were horrendous.
Yeah, they didn't play well. We do know that Luke Brunn can dunk a basketball, though. So
With 2 hands.
With 2 hands. Okay. They will. Where am I at here? They will play. Them and the Crusaders will play for a right to play off constantly. The Crusaders paging Dr. Rieger. Do they have any talk about the Crusaders sneaking in? And now we'll chat a little bit about the end of the bracket, and then I also want to talk about who you think, where the real contenders end. So talk a little bit about kind of the Crusaders and that matchup.
Here's the big issue is it's going to be tomorrow in Fridley, and it's midnight right now. They're all going to wake up to find out they have a game tomorrow. Now, I know we've scrolled it in the past. Well, we didn't scroll it, but you've talked about it several times throughout the season when the playoffs are going to be. But I don't think those guys are going to make it up.
Them and Crusaders. Which one?
I think them will get enough guys up there. They've been in the league long enough to understand that Thursday matchups happen. But the Crusaders, they don't have anybody outside of – they don't have anybody that's playing in Fridley this season. And they historically play their playing games Tuesday, and they've happened in Bloomington in the past. So I'll be interested to see if they show up tomorrow. That's kind of what worries me about the Crusaders.
Okay, off constantly will be the 5 seed in that region. They've been without Ryan Jansen for much of the season. They've got an absolutely stacked team, but are they going to now show up since the playoffs coming? Do you give them a good shot in that region?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they have the talent. The issue is they're undersized. They can play big, but they don't have a shot blocker, and they're guard heavy. But they shouldn't have an issue. If them throws that zone at them, they have enough guards and they have enough savvy players to beat that zone. And the Crusaders, they can't match up with them. So I think they'll have an easy road there. Now it's probably going to come down to sock thumpers off constantly. I would say between those, I mean, those are 4. That's an easy road for those 2 teams to make it to the Final Four, or to make it to the Elite 8. And I think they'll both get there pretty easily.
I wouldn't sleep on them. Don't sleep on them, nation. So, okay, up to the number 2 seeded Rebels. They will play the winner of Killer Bees Shockers. Killer Bees Shockers, in that there's 8 teams that were 4-4. I guess let's kind of dig into where and why we had them where we had them.
Well, I mean, the Bees were slotted in pretty consensus at 15 because it was FOB, Killer Bees, America. FOB beat Killer Bees and America, and then FOB beat America. So it was easy to put those teams in place. And the Shockers, it really came down to Muskies, Shockers, Rubio Tuesdays, and the way that the resumes played out, those 3 teams were seeded properly. So typically in the past, 15 through 20 have been a jarble, and this time around it was actually the 7 through 14 that got all mixed around. But if you look at the board, 15, 16, 17, none of them really changed their spot. So I think we got it. Everything's right there.
Okay, in that bracket, Gorillas 10, defending champion Gorillas 10, Bulls 7. A great matchup next Wednesday night. Talk about the Gorillas being the defending champion, being at 10 despite having 63 points. I think they were voted in at 12 or 13. What do you say to those teams that now potentially have to play tomorrow night because the Players Committee jumped Gorillas 2 slots?
Well, the Gorillas were at 12 and they jumped to 10, and they actually jumped the Warriors and them. Them is the only team that's playing now because of that. And the issue is them doesn't have a win. They don't have a good win all season. I think their best win came against the 13 seed. I believe they beat the Red Devils. Can't remember off the top of my head.
My head's pretty fuzzy right now.
They didn't have a good win, whereas the Gorillas, they beat them head to head, and they beat the number 1 seed, which kind of vaulted them to the 10 spot. ahead of both the Warriors and them, because the Warriors, they had 3 good losses, I guess you can say, but they didn't really have a good marquee win. So that's why they both got jumped, and them now has to play tomorrow because of it.
This is a tough region. Rebels 2, Gorillas 10, Bulls 7. I mean, that's tough. So, who do you have coming out of that region?
Probably the Rebels. I think they out of those teams, they look the strongest. I think this season, the Goodfellas and Rebels should have a pretty confident road to the Final Four, and likely the finals is my guess.
The Rebels confidently, huh? I mean, that's gonna be a tough matchup. Whoever they end up playing, potentially.
They have the tools to get it done.
Okay, the Avengers region, number 3 seeded Avengers. They'll take on the winner of Fob 5 and Rubio Tuesdays. Rubio Tuesdays first chance, first time in the league. They make the postseason. Which wasn't easy. Going through the Bloomington South schedule. Anything to discuss here between 14 and 19? I think a lot of those 4-4 teams fell where they should have fallen. So I think Rubio Tuesdays was ranked correctly. And I also believe that Fob 5 was right about where they should be. They beat off constantly, but also. So even though it was 5-4 half game.
I think those 2 teams are put right where they should have been, and I don't think either have a case to be up higher or lower than what they were.
Warriors, Squires, bottom end of that bracket. That'll be a good first matchup for those 2 teams. A good cross league matchup. 6 Squires. They were tied with Off Constantly when we initially voted, but I just think the eye test, we gave it to Off Constantly.
I think with the issue with Squires, they lost to the Red Devils. And that kind of mixed some things around. Off Constantly showed up with 4 guys. They likely would have beat Fob with 5. That's kind of the consensus. But we didn't really go about. We still considered Off Constantly's loss to Fob, but Squires losing to Red Devils, and the way that the Red Devils lost to the Crusaders. I mean, the Red Devils kind of controlled a lot of seeds tonight.
They did. We were talking about them a lot.
So what nobody was able to peg how good that team really is. Nobody really knew. I mean, they've played good enough to be as high as a 5 seed, and they've played bad enough to be as low as a team that doesn't even make the playoffs. So the Squires kind of got it was a tiebreaker. Then they gave the edge to Off Constantly. I had the Squires personally, but looking at those brackets now that I'm looking at them, I mean, the Rebels Avengers side is so much tougher than the fellas Sock Thumpers Off Constantly side. You look at Squires, Warriors, Avengers, Bulls, Gorillas, Rebels. I mean, that's 6 teams that I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams made the finals. And if you look at the fellas, Thumpers Off Constantly are the only 3 teams that I can see making the finals there. And would you agree that that's a much tougher side of the bracket?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you look at teams like them. I mean, I actually think them's going to win that bracket. I'm not saying that to joke. I actually seriously think they will, and I'll get to my predictions in a second here. But who do you have coming out of the Avengers bracket? Yes, this side is much more difficult. You're correct.
I have the Squires coming out because I think they're a little bit better than the Warriors. Now, the Warriors can run them, but I think this is the season where the Squires make it to the Final Four. They play the Rebels, and I can see them squeaking it out because they got a lot of confidence. Jerry's finally gelling with that team. The thing that worries me is that Red Devils loss. I mean, that does stand out quite a bit, but I'm assuming they're going to turn on in the playoffs.
So I actually am going to have Goodfellas, them. I'm going to have the Gorillas and the Warriors. Those are my Final Four.
You're way off.
So you have Goodfellas.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go chalk here pretty much, and I'm gonna go. Well, no, I'm gonna go Fellas, Off Constantly, Rebels, Squires.
We'll see. Okay, two big things I want to chat about. Where does the line? Okay, so obviously 1 to 6, 7, you could see a legit chance at winning a Gold Cup. Where does that line end? Where you would be blown away if, let's say, 15. That's where it ends, where I'd be blown away if they win. Like, no chance.
I'd say 11. But here's what's interesting. It ends at 11, but UANO has no chance of winning. I can see the Warriors winning. I can see the Gorillas winning. Blue Chips, I actually don't see. I just don't think they have enough to win. So I would say that there's 9 teams that I would not be blown away if any of those 9 teams won. With the Blue Chips being right on the cusp, and UNO not being one of them. I can see them maybe going to the Final Four, long shot at the finals. Red Devils, the rest 13 on down, not a chance. UNO, and then 13 on down, they won't make it to the Final Four.
Okay, and then the end of the bracket, we've got the Barracudas in at 20, their first trip to the playoffs. They're in over the Pigeons despite a head-to-head loss. Crusaders at 21. Talk about the end, the bottom of the bracket.
Well, there's kind of a debate there because the rule was if you're 3 and 5, you have to have 2 votes to get in.
If you're outside the top 20.
The top 20. And the Pigeons were outside the top 20, and they had 2 votes. However, one of the votes was on the team,
and those don't count.
Those don't count, so they're down to 1. We discussed it, and we determined before that pre-season or pre-discussion voting with the 2 people had to vote, so I couldn't have changed my vote to let them in.
Correct.
So it had to be a predetermined vote before we decide. Now, after discussing it, I can see the Pigeons being ahead of the Crusaders, and I actually had the Crusaders ahead of the Pigeons. The issue, what really hurt the Pigeons, and this is why they're not in the playoffs, is that they lost by 37 to Off Constantly, 43 to the Avengers, not the Bulls, another Warriors. Warriors, they lost by 35. Those 3 games really hurt them. Bulls, UNO, each double digits. So their loss. Their margin of defeat was so great that it kind of gave Crusaders the edge.
Do you feel as though the system is correct in how the players committee does it? So there's 20 guaranteed, but there could be as many as 24.
Yes, I like that. Here's the issue that I have with kind of pre-voting is some people don't spend enough time doing their homework. And I'll be honest, this committee meeting I didn't have enough. I didn't know voting for the Crusaders to be ahead of the Pigeons would have knocked the Pigeons out necessarily. Had I known that, maybe I would have put more time in the bottom half of my bracket. But it goes 2 ways. You don't want to have somebody be swayed to let a team in the playoffs just because there might be one of their friends that's on the team.
Sure.
So I like it both. It goes hand. There's 2 ways to look at it. It's good and bad. So
yeah, no, I thought overall the committee did a nice job this season. We got done in relatively good time. I don't like the Gorillas at 10, but I have them in my Final Four, so I guess whatever. But they don't deserve the 10th seed. They played like garbage the majority of the season, and they should have been 12, 13, 14. No offense, but you guys weren't inspired. So who wins it?
Rebels win it.
Okay. Mr. Briggs, who wins it?
Blue Chips.
Blue Chips. He's predicting Blue Chips. So I'm hoping that we have a 9th consecutive season with a 9th different winner.
And who would that need to be?
I'm going to give it to the Sock Thumpers.
So Goodfellas. So
actually,
Goodfellas.
Here's the deal.
Sock
Let me just finish my thing. So preseason, I predicted Sock Thumpers over them. I just predicted them in the Final Four, and I'm predicting Sock Thumpers in the championship. So technically, that can't actually happen. But Sock Thumpers are them. Whoever comes out of that region is going to win it.
So, but you would need for this 9th in a row: Goodfellas, Sock Thumpers, Off Constantly, Squires, Blue Chips, Warriors,
them.
So you got some horses in this race.
It'd be great. I would love that. I think that shows a healthy league with a lot of different parity. So a far cry from what it used to be.
I agree.
All right, UH Nation, we will see you tomorrow night, or tonight, I guess, in Fridley for the playing games.